Hey, how's everyone doing out there? Welcome to a Word Hole Media presentation of Major League A-Holes in the Hole and Socks type thing. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. You are in the hole with Major League A-Holes and Socks type thing on this kind of opening day, kinda. We opened the season in Korea this morning. I'm not sure how many people were up to watch it. It was 6 o'clock my time, 5 a.m. your time.
I was up at 5:45, but didn't turn the game on until 7:30 after I got done getting ready for work.
I tuned in just in time to see a ball go right through the first baseman's glove, which was hilarious.
Oh, you saw that? I heard the recap of it, but
yeah,
Jake Cronenworth.
There's a lot of weird. There's a lot of weird shit that happened with that game. We'll get into that, but lots and lots of news with your White Sox and Giants. Of course, the Dylan Cease trade happened about 8 hours after we recorded the previous episode. You've got an opening day starter, or maybe an opening day opener to talk about. And Michael Kopech got sent down to the bullpen. We have a classic asshole of the week when we get to our Cubs segment. Sammy Sosa reared his ugly head once again in the city of Chicago and immediately stuck his foot in his mouth and revealed himself to be the legendary phony that he is. It'll be fun to break down. We'll get into the Giants signing Blake Snell. We mentioned him a lot this offseason. I thought maybe he might go to you guys just because he wanted to be on the West Coast. I thought that made some sense. We'll break that all down. I think you've got some other Giants thoughts. The Athletic also released a list of their top 20 impact rookies to look out for this season. And our podcast is represented well with Giant at number 1, Cub at number 3, and two Tigers at number 4, number 5, and number 6. So I thought that was too good to not bring up as we head into this 2024 season. We're also reviving an old segment, Shit You Couldn't Make Up. Lots of crazy shit happening, including some breaking news involving Shohei Ohtani, which we'll delve into briefly, but it's like this just came up about an hour before the podcast, and I think might actually become one of the biggest stories in baseball this year, the way things are looking. So we're light on details on that. I feel like we have a journalistic responsibility to talk about it, even though we know nothing about it. So maybe it's an irresponsible journalist responsibility, but I think with that, we might as well go ahead and jump into the news. So was today opening day or not opening day? I'm confused how like MLB is branding this. Certainly it was the first game of the season, but they're not calling it opening day because that's another marketing campaign for next week. As the as the Dodgers and Padres met in Seoul, South Korea. Local time for Giants, or God damn it, for Dodgers and Padres fans was 3:05 a.m.
Yeah, it seems
to kick off their season.
Seems great. Seems like a great marketing for baseball. Maybe put an East Coast team. Maybe send some East Coast teams over there.
Well, I guess the thought process is, it's an easier flight from the West Coast, so maybe it's easier on the athletes themselves as opposed to pandering to the television audience that may or may not exist at even 6 a.m. on the East Coast. But yeah, it was stranger than that. There was actually a bomb threat before the game. I don't know if you heard about that. That was apparently directed towards Shohei Ohtani. It was directed towards Shohei Ohtani, of all people, who's going to come up later in this show. But so that was a weird start to the festivities of this 2024 baseball season. The one part I did catch middle of the game when was it Jake Cronenworth, the grounder to first base went right through his glove, leading to the go-ahead run, and eventually Dodgers winning 5-2. I don't know. So you didn't catch any of that?
I turned it on right at, I think that happened in like the 7th, through the wickets, the glove falling apart, according to the analysts on the air. But I caught the 8th and the top of the 9th. And, the funny thing, it was a perfect inning for a White Sox fan to catch because I got to see Joe Kelly come in and pitch efficiently. Weird. So weird. So strange. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I used to get like a few years ago when they did this, I did get up and turn the game on because I was just so excited about baseball. But now I'm just scratching my head as I get older, and the marketing machine of baseball, and as you pointed out to me, the money involved in it by calling it a regular season game versus a spring training game where they, as I suggested to you during texting earlier today, that why not just make it a spring training game where the teams just agree to play their starting lineups to showcase them for all their Korean fans. And you said dollar signs back to me. And I guess, yeah, you're right. I mean,
it'd be hard to market that as a legit. I mean, who cares about a spring training game that's on another continent? To give it real consequence, I guess, is to make it a regular season game that counts in the standings. But
yeah,
it's just
to get
it's
people
so
to tune
early in the it's so early in spring training that like Yu Darvish, San Diego starter, only went 4 innings because he's not ramped up, or that's what they decided at that time. But I think Glass now for the Dodgers only went 5 innings. So that seems to be where everyone's at in spring training right now. All the starters are going maybe 4 or 5 at this point, not ramping up past that. So it's kind of still a spring training game, whether they call it that or not.
right.
Being on March 20th, so it's just trying to grow the game. I get it. Trying to make money. I get it. It's just an awkward way to start the season. It's also in a dome. I forget what they call it. Some sort of sky dome there in Seoul. It's just a sterile atmosphere. I mean, the points when I tuned in, honestly, I did not see first pitch. I was about an hour and a half late, and I tuned in, and it was just really dead atmosphere, echoey, a lot like watching a Tampa Bay Rays game in their Tropicana concrete blister. I don't know. It just didn't feel right. I guess they play tomorrow morning as well, which I can't believe anyone would be paying much attention to, especially if it's 3 a.m. on the West Coast there.
Yeah, I think the
But
Padres
what
are
can you do?
using. I think the Padres are using like already have like the who's ever starting is only going like two or three innings at the most. They said during the
Yeah.
broadcast today. So to your point, it's like they're still treating them, other than probably rolling out the full offensive lineups, that aspect of it from a pitching standpoint, you're not going to put anyone at risk because they're calling these regular season games.
Yeah.
And the thing
Yeah.
that always annoyed me about this is now these guys go back and play spring training games.
Yeah,
No,
I get that part of it. They have to give them plenty of time to get back to the continent, get back acclimated with the proper time zone. I would think a week would be about enough. They're coming back. They'd be coming back Friday, and the regular season starts next Thursday, so it gives them just under a week to get reacclimated. So I get why they're doing it at this point, a week before to give them time. But yeah, it's strange that they'll come back and play spring training games
right. I mean,
regardless. What was interesting about it is new Padre Dylan Cease decided to make the trip directly to Seoul, Korea, as he was traded from your Chicago White Sox.
that's right. The Dylan Cease bobblehead came through. Yeah, the Dylan Cease trade happened, and as Smitty pointed out at the beginning of the broadcast, it just didn't happen in time for our to line up with our podcast,
Yeah,
which
it
is
happened. I think it
hilarious.
was exactly 8 hours after we hit the
Yeah,
stop button on our record that the Dylan Cease trade actually went through, which we were
yeah,
predicting would happen any time. But
yeah. My storyline was, would the Dylan Cease trade happen before Jerry gets his new stadium? Well, that has been answered. The Dylan Cease
yes,
trade did happen, and Chris Getz, stuck to his guns, and apparently he got, not top. He got one top 100 prospect. Well, two, if depending on what outlet you're
yeah,
reading.
I've seen that.
Yeah, so whatever. That's neither here or there because no one knows how any of these players are going to pan out. But what he did net was, three of the Padres higher ranked prospects. And the key, one of the centerpieces of it, which has a funny storyline, is Drew Thorpe. He is the prospect who is on every top 100 prospect list. Unfortunately, he made his White Sox debut the other day and lasted 2 2/3 innings, allowing 8 runs and 10 hits. Welcome to the White Sox, Drew Thorpe.
Ouch.
Yeah.
He was just working on stuff. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, he's considered the closest to the majors at 23 years old. He pitched 7 innings for the Dodgers in spring training, allowing no runs and a .86 whip. So I don't know. Is it our coaching staff as usual? Let's fucking hope not. Other parts of the trade that seem to, favor the White Sox as being a decent enough trade is Iriarte, the number 8th ranked prospect in the Padres organization. He's a 22-year-old pitcher. He had 128 strikeouts in 27 games. 21 of those were starts. What's even better is when he made the move from single A to double A. At double A, he had a 15.6 strikeout per 9 innings in 13 starts he made for double A. So, arrow pointing up on that part. One of the more interesting parts of it is this Samuel Zavala, no relation to Zebby Zavala. He's a 19-year-old outfielder. The scouting report on him is speed and power. He played single A at 18 last year, had 14 homers, stole 20 bases. He said his goal is to be a 30-30 guy. I'm sure a lot of people's goals is that. But, one of the key components to him is he's not chasing right now. He has a very low chase rate. He's not swinging at shitty pitches. Again, this is single A, so I think it's a lot easier there. So, let's not, pop the champagne bottle just yet. But seems like a solid pick. And, the forgotten name in this whole thing is Steve Wilson, who is actually going to be in the White Sox bullpen this year. He's a 29.
It actually sounds like the most forgettable name possible.
Right.
Steve Wilson.
Yeah. Isn't he one of your friends, Steve Wilson?
Yeah. I think I went to school with that guy.
Exactly. 29-year-old reliever. He had 22 holds last season, 10th in the NL. Held batters to a 185 batting average, 11th in the NL. So pretty decent bullpen piece the White Sox got out of that deal.
That sounds like something you would just be moving at the trade deadline. Some asset you could move for future prospects or
possibly.
something. That was the only part of the trade that didn't really make any sense to me, but I heard somebody propose that idea. I'm like, that makes a little more sense if that's just somebody on your roster to trade in July.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think there's a huge part of that, but could help make White Sox games more tolerable before then. I think it's the type of trade where, the Padres had one of the best pitching staffs, or maybe arguably the best pitching staff in the NL last year. And I think it's an obvious win for them. And, when you're dealing in prospects, Smitty, I mean, you and I know, I watched it go not the right way for the last few years with the White Sox. What are they dealing? They're dealing what ifs. They're dealing what ifs for someone who's proven, who is going to probably help solidify them and give them a real chance in the NL West. And he's going to be there for a couple years. It's not like they traded these prospects away and they get 1 year out of them. I mean, he's going to be there.
That's why Getz had to trade Dylan Cease this offseason to get the most out of him, get 2 years of control to the Padres. So much more valuable than just the 1 year. So this is why Getz did the right thing. This is why we knew this was going to happen, regardless of your bobblehead over there. Logic dictated that this trade needed to happen. When it didn't, I think Getz got everything he could out of it. He leveraged the Garrett Cole injury situation to its fullest. Got the Rangers on the phone and got apparently the Padres on the phone. We had mentioned those last week.
Yeah.
And the Padres are the ones that pulled the trigger, and I think he got the best deal out of them. So I think if you want to grade Chris Getz on this move, I think you give him an A. The problem is the White Sox getting good returns and trades for prospects has never been an issue. It's just a matter of developing those prospects into major league producers.
What?
So
wait, what? Say what?
I can tell you the happiest people about this Dylan Cease trade are Tigers fans. Those of us wearing the old English D as I am right now. Because we do not have to face Dylan Cease on opening day, who owns a 10-1 record against the Tigers with a 2.07 ERA. So we are rejoicing in Detroit that we don't have to face Dylan Cease, at least on opening day.
Well, now,
Thank you, Chris Getz.
But now, Smitty, you have to face your new Tiger Tamer, a opening day start 123 years in the making, Garrett Crochet. That's right.
Yeah. We'll have to face him for maybe an inning and a half or inning, maybe
wow.
Hopefully two innings for you guys.
Well, after we light up Scooble, watch out.
All right.
Not really. But in strange, go ahead.
I'm curious what you thought about the announcement of Garrett Crochet being your opening day starter, considering he's never started a major league game. He's not pitched more than 70. He's pitched 73 innings in his entire major league career.
Roger.
So you brought up the history of it. 123 years in the making.
Yeah. So thank you, Chris Kampka, for posting this on Twitter because he is the stat master. But in 1901, Roy Patterson for the White Sox made his MLB debut as a starter. So that's the last time this has ever happened in White Sox history. I'm not sure if it's even happened in baseball history.
Do you realize, I don't think Kampka pointed this out, but that's also the first major league game of the Chicago White Sox.
Yes, that was
their first major league game.
Yeah, so the technicality on this one is the American League was only considered a minor league system up until 1901. So Roy Patterson was the opening day starter for the minor league White Sox in the 1900. So I don't know. Maybe this has really never happened.
I just love that it's happening this opening day, and it happened your inaugural opening day as well. So
yes,
a lot of history there.
To answer your question,
very different circumstances.
Yes, to answer your question though, to be honest with what I'm expecting out of this White Sox season, I say why not? It's not like we're throwing Garrett Crochet out there and we're like, fuck, how's this going to affect our playoff hopes? It's not, because there are no playoff hopes.
Right.
I say rip off the Band-Aid. Let's see what this kid's got. He's always been slotted to be a starter. Give him the vote of confidence and see what his, let's see what his nerves are. And opening day starts, for young pitchers are like a bit of a nervy thing. It's like almost like a playoff game for him. So let's see what he's got. I mean, his spring training, which we all know means dick, has been phenomenal. So hasn't allowed a run. So,
I think he'll be extremely effective, but I go back to the point, like
how
he's not going to be able to pitch. Yeah, he's not going to be able to pitch many innings. He pitched 12 innings last year. He pitched 73 in his entire career. He's pitched in his consecutive innings. He's only pitched 3 consecutive innings once in his career, or maybe that's the most he's ever pitched, 3 consecutive innings. So you've got to ramp up. You've got to build up innings. You look at an innings total. There's got to be some kind of innings limit or pitch limit on him going forward. I would just randomly think maybe 100 innings is their goal to get him this year. If he gets 35 starts, that's averaging less than 3 innings per start. So that's why I think maybe if that's what they're thinking of doing, he's an opener essentially. They're going to have him throw a couple innings as deep as he can go, maybe once through the lineup, and then build on that. I just think you'd have to shut him down early in the season if he starts building up too many innings, because you can't expect a guy to go from 0 to 180 innings that a current day starter does in a season, even as low as that is in relative to previous years. I think to think he's going to be a regular starter is just not. It's not going to be the case. Just because any human couldn't handle that ramp up of workload.
Yeah, I mean,
I think this might be a development year. Like
Mhm.
they use this year to get him to become a real starter next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the idea of getting him into the idea of starting and getting him used to that role versus coming out of the bullpen, I think it worked out well for the White Sox because you've got a guy like Kopech who does not seem to be able to make it as a starter, but sure can be effective when he just lets it loose for an inning or two, and isn't worried about like stressing out his arm. So perhaps it's Crochet for 3 innings on opening day. Kopech comes in and pitches 2. So you're through 5 there, and then you turn it over to your bullpen, which a lot of starters only go 5 innings. We'll be getting to one of those guys in a little bit. Well, he goes
Well,
a little.
that
He goes a
you
little
just
more than
touched on
5,
the
but go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
you just touched on the other big news is that the official announcement that Michael Kopech will be coming out of the bullpen and no longer
Yeah,
a starter.
yeah, exactly. And it's smart. Probably should have happened last year. We've seen him very effective as a reliever. The thing is, will he embrace the role? Because every time he's went to the bullpen, excuse me, every time he's went to the bullpen, he's talked about working his way back to being in the starting rotation. I think you have the makings of a 9th inning guy that can be dominating. Because when he's throwing that 100-mile-an-hour pitch and it's moving like it does within the zone, not at someone, which is also another problem for him, control. But you know, I, I think that's his makeup. And I think that's been his problem as a starter is they're like, you got to let off the gas. We need you out there working into the 6th inning. And when he's trying to be more of like a little more of a finesse guy, it's not working for him. And I think you can limit his, he's been a little bit injury prone. I think coming out of the bullpen for an inning or two, getting him into that role, and then maybe eventually moving him into like a closer type role. I think it's good for everybody. I think he demand decent money as a prominent closer in baseball. So I hope that's the direction it goes. I hope the storyline. I hope we're not on here doing the podcast talking about, oh, the Sox are, Kopech's working his way back to the rotation later this year. Like I don't want to hear that.
Well, yeah, we've heard that. We've heard that before. We don't need to hear it again. I think I echoed all your points there. That it seems like the right role. It seems like the role he should have been in for quite some time now. He's got electric stuff, but I almost think he gets in his own way. He thinks too much out there. He seems, and when you give him one assignment, maybe simplify his repertoire down to down to 2 pitches, maybe 3. Just go out there and mow 3 guys down and get the fuck out. Then it simplifies things for him, and that's where he could be far more effective. He didn't sound real excited about it and when the announcement was made, but he did also say the right things and that he wants to do whatever it takes to help the Sox win. I think that's the right attitude. But and I understand why a lifetime starter would not want to be. It is a demotion to the bullpen because it's going to be in the long term. It's a pay cut. The multi-year, multi-million dollar, tens of millions of dollars don't typically go to relievers. Like they go to starters. So
right.
That's, I think, why every pitcher aspires to be a starter. But that doesn't mean that he can't figure this out and become an elite reliever, if not a closer. So, and like you said, there's dollars there. So if that's his motivation, there's still money to be made.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean they've only used him once in relief since the demotion, and I mean he hit the radar gun at a hundo a few times,
Yeah.
and it was a 1-2-3 inning. It was the easiest inning I've seen him pitch in God knows when. So since he was on that like weird mini epic run, like at one point last year where he had pieced like 3 good games together, and every White Sox fan was rejoicing, and then it all fell apart. So
Well, I think limiting his innings, to your point, certainly limits the exposure to injury, which has been an issue throughout his career. So
Yeah,
I think it makes sense on a lot of levels. I think that's why it doesn't really surprise anyone that's been paying attention. So, and I certainly think it works well for you on opening day. The scenario you painted, where Crochet to Kopech for a couple innings, that could be a total of 6 innings right there, and that's your starter. The opener plus the middle reliever
right.
equals potentially 6 innings. So that those could be lights out innings. What happens after that is anyone's guess, of course. But
Yeah,
there was
no.
also
Yeah, no. I just said yeah. Who the fuck knows?
yeah.
Well, we bring in Steven Wilson.
Yes, my old buddy from band camp.
Oh, Stevie Wilson's coming in. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all I've got for the White Sox this week. Arrow pointing not down, maybe just east. I don't know.
Hard to know.
Hard to know.
We'll find out on Thursday as my Detroit Tigers come to town
I know.
to take on your White Sox.
I don't
I
think
will
we could
not be
start the
there.
season off any better.
I mean, we're looking forward to it. We'll see how
I
things
bet
pan
you
out,
are.
but
You son of a bitch.
well, let's transition over to the north side of Chicago, where there is some news, Cubs adjacent, I will call it. Not necessarily Cubs news, but you may have heard of this fellow named Sammy Sosa, a former Chicago Cub.
The guy
He
who's
has
been
not.
bleaching himself?
Well, he seems to look a little more normal these
Oh,
days, at
good.
least in the pictures I saw, a little less pale than you and I, but yes, one Sammy Sosa reared his ugly head in the city of Chicago for the first time in 17 years.
Wow.
And you and I know about this particularly because the last time he was in Chicago, he was with his Texas Rangers taking on the Chicago
God.
White
That
Sox.
was the last time he was in Chicago?
The last time he was in Chicago, you and I were in the stands witnessing Sammy, of all people, breaking up the perfect game of Mark Burley, who later went on to throw his first no-hitter, fortunately for us, as we got to witness that in a cold Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whatever
Yeah,
night
it's
of the
like a
week that
Tuesday,
was.
Wednesday night. It was pretty much like the weather is right now in here.
Yeah.
Winds blowing. Probably what? 10,000 people there, maybe 8,000.
Yeah.
I took Smitty
Few
because,
angry people there.
yeah, well, one angry person for sure. I
In
took
particular,
Smitty.
yes.
Smitty agreed to go because he loves baseball. I couldn't get White
That's
Sox
me.
fans to go. I could not get White Sox fans to go to this game because they were too cold for them.
We were on a text chain and like, oh, let Sean will go or Craig will go or whoever. And I just got sick of it. And I said, I'll just go so we don't have to continue this text chain any longer. So I'm always up for a baseball game, even though the weather conditions weren't right. And I certainly was not rooting for either the White Sox or the Rangers or Sammy Sosa. But lesson to you all out there, kids. Always take up a free baseball ticket if you can, because you never know what the fuck's going to happen.
Yeah, I was a full,
And Mark Burley.
full season ticket holder back then.
That's right. Yeah, you were hardcore. Yeah, so that was quite an evening. That also happened to be the last time Sammy Sosa was in the city of Chicago. Until this past weekend, we're at some sort of autograph festival of sorts.
Okay.
Out in Rosemont there. Sammy Sosa agreed to show up because he could sell his autograph for $500 a pop.
What?
It was also an official media session where he would be interviewed by local media. And he made a statement talking about the long absence and his strained, to say the least, strained relationship with the Chicago Cubs since he left in 2004. Sammy said, in the past, possibly I did it my way, and maybe I made some mistakes. But now that I have my 2 feet on the ground, I'm a better person to handle any conversation. To which the obvious follow-up question would be, as Lou Canellis from Fox 32 put it, are you telling me that you recognize the fact that maybe you did steroids? At which point, Sammy Sosa appeared completely blindsided by the question, where he let out some nervous laughter, a lot of hems and haws. He seemed very confused, and he finally said, "Not a question I expected from you." Like, how could you not expect that question? The first time you're back in Chicago since 2007, you have not been allowed into the National Baseball Hall of Fame merely because of your steroid accusations. It's clear that steroids is the largest issue of your career, yet he was completely blindsided that someone would actually ask him about that. Specifically when he said he wanted to take responsibility for the mistakes he had made, to which I wonder, what mistakes is he referring to that he was willing to talk about? Was he willing to talk about the corked bat that he was caught? Whatever year, believe that was 2004. You had a blast with that, at least in our fantasy league, naming or Corky's Revenge, I believe, was your team name that year.
Yes, Corky's Revenge.
Yeah. We didn't have a blog at that point, so you weren't able to mercilessly bash him for all that, but that would have been fun. I would have been on your side, of course, with that. Would it be that he's willing to admit he abandoned his team and his teammates on the final day of 2004?
I mean, that's a big one.
I was actually attending that game as well. The final game, I thought it was going to be a celebration of the 2004 Cubs going to the playoffs, except they collapsed that final week. Little did I know while I was witnessing that game, Sammy Sosa was heading out into the parking lot to get the fuck out in the fourth inning. There was a whole thing about that, which is hilarious. I'm sure we've recounted before, but he said he did not leave the game early, to which the Cubs actually released timestamp video footage of him in the parking lot during the middle of the game, getting into his vehicle and taking off, which makes me laugh just that the Cubs would go to that length to prove him to be such a phony and a liar. I don't know what else they had to gain by that, but that's the famous boombox incident where his teammates beat the fuck out of his boombox that was terrorizing them for an entire season, as his inflated ego thought it was good for him to play whatever music he wanted at the highest volume that apparently nobody liked. And the rumor is that Kerry Wood was the perpetrator of the bat incident onto the boombox, which I cannot blame him at all. Other phony instances of Sammy's career is just, he famously ran out to right field to greet the fans before every game. He'd run out with American flags at times. And then when he was called in front of Congress, of course, for the steroid accusations, the steroid hearings, he pretended he couldn't speak English and had interpreters come out. So
that's my favorite.
Every level. Yeah, just on every level. Sammy Sosa is a total phony and a complete asshole. So I will make him our asshole of the week.
Yeah. Now, somehow I live in Chicago, Smitty, and I had not heard a thing about this.
I think you're going to a lot of concerts and not paying any attention to baseball.
Well, I don't listen to sports radio at all now.
That's all I do. So maybe that's why I'm
that's
tuned
probably
in.
Why it wasn't. If it's not covered on the morning news or ESPN, then I'm not getting it. And I have to say, I can't. The arrogance that still persists with him is just, it's unbelievable. It's like to say to Lou Canellis, like basically, I didn't expect that question from you. Well, if it wasn't Lou, someone was going to ask that question, because you're basically sitting there saying, I'm ready to admit I did a bunch of bad shit because I went about things my own way, and I'm willing to accept that. But you're not.
He says it, but then he won't admit what he did wrong. He just says, I made some mistakes, and he just wants everyone to smile and buy his autograph for $500.
God, was it really $500 for his autograph?
He had a pricing list. Like there was different prices for a signed baseball or a signed photograph or a signed bat.
Oh,
it was
my God.
A bunch of different things. So I might be wrong on that number there, but I'm averaging. I think it's pretty close. But if he ever does get into the Cubs Hall of Fame, that price probably goes up to $600. I think is his thought process, by trying to get back in the good graces of the Cubs and Cubs fans.
By admitting to nothing.
Yeah, I admit nothing. I admit everything and nothing at the exact same time.
Well, he doesn't really speak good English or understand English, so maybe it was just a translation problem, Smitty.
He speaks very fine English. I was quite impressed with his English skills. So it's amazing. That's all I've got. Yes, Sammy, you are still and will always be a fucking asshole.
Indeed. Well, should we move over to the Bay?
I think we move over for a little gigantism.
All right. Well, in case you guys didn't hear, everyone out there in the world who loves baseball, finally, a signing I think we've been talking about was going to most likely happen for 2 fucking months on this. This is almost as bad as Cody Bellinger re-signing with the Cubs finally. Blake Snell finally signed with the Giants. Was it 2 years, $62 million? I believe.
Yeah, with an opt-out after the first year, which seems to be a trademark of Scott Boras clients this offseason.
That's right. It's a trademark of it's a Scott Boras signature. When he doesn't get a long-term deal, everyone can opt out right away because, $31 million a year, just how can I live on that?
Well, Scott Boras promises long-term deals and hundreds of millions of dollars to his athletes. He continues to fail at that, at least this offseason, where I would say now he is 0 for 3. But I do think it's a win for Blake Snell in that he's, of course, got all that money coming towards him, and he can still opt out and hit the market again next year. I do think it's a win for your Giants as well, which I think you may have just assembled the best pitching staff, at least in the NL West.
Yeah, it's a huge win for us, especially if he does anything near what he did last year, winning the Cy Young, leading the league in ERA plus at 182, least amount of walks. He only had 99 walks over the entire season, lowest ERA at 225 in the NL. I don't know, maybe that might even been the majors. I'm not even sure. What's interesting about Blake Snell, and you and I have talked about it, is so he averaged 5 2/3 innings pitched last year, but we often see him exit, after 5. I mean, his average again was he pitched into the 6th, but couldn't get out of the 6th inning.
No quality starts.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Yeah, it is tough.
Well, he does have quality starts, but he averaged less than.
Yeah. What's interesting is when you look at his career and you could understand why someone was not willing to commit a long-term deal. He's pitched 180 innings twice. Last year for the Padres and 2018 for the Tampa Bay Rays. Both of those years, he did win the Cy Young. He won the Cy Young both of those years, and he led the league in his his ERA plus in 2018 with the Tampa Bay Rays was 217. that is like his ERA was a 1.89. He started 31 games and had a 1.89 ERA, 21-5. Like he obviously has good stuff, but he's been injured. The following year, he pitched 107 innings. We had the strike year or the COVID year, so we won't even look at that. But then in 21, 128 and 128 again for the Padres. So and then he comes back in a contract year. Oh, what a surprise. He comes back with a Cy Young performance. So he has motivation. It might be in the Giants' best interest this season that he has an opt-out after 1 year.
I think so.
That he's going to feel, he's going to want to perform to get a longer term deal out of it. So I think it does solidify a rotation right now that on opening day is Logan Webb, Blake Snell, Kyle Harrison, who we'll be talking about in a little bit. Then you got a couple question marks. You got Jordan Hicks, who we talked about earlier in the season. He's been more of a bullpen person that the Giants converted into a starter, kind of like the Garrett Crochet situation, who's had injury problems. So you question that. And then Keaton Wynn, another Giants farmhand. But you do have Robbie Ray. We can't forget about Robbie Ray coming back mid-season.
On the horizon.
So suddenly, whether it's Hicks that pitches okay or Wynn that pitches okay, what you do have then is you've got a rotation of Logan Webb, Blake Snell, Robbie Ray, or Kyle Harrison, and then Robbie Ray, either way, and then your fifth starter. And when that happens, if Robbie Ray comes back and is anything near what he can normally perform at, then the Giants have a legitimate starting staff to make. Hopefully they're in the hunt and definitely can make a push for the playoffs. I'm not saying it's the division, but they definitely make a push to the playoffs. And that is really if you're talking about Giant storylines that I was going to do tonight, I had that on the docket before I anticipated them signing Blake Snell, but the number one thing in question for me was their pitching, and having to wait for Robbie Ray to come back. Now Robbie Ray coming back mid-season doesn't seem quite as an uphill battle with the signing of Blake Snell. So, the Giants have really won three World Series on two things, pitching and defense. So, number one, can we get that?
And Marco Scutaro, don't forget.
Marco Scutaro, yeah, your guy. That's your guy. So, my number one storyline was, will this piece together pitching staff hold up? That was before Blake Snell was there. Now that Blake Snell's there, I think we're in pretty good shape. Number two was defense. Now the Giants defensively throughout their up until the Gabe Kapler era were always at the top of their defensive game. They were always within the top 5 of defensive fielding. You know where they ended up last year? Do you have any idea, Smitty?
I do not.
Last, behind the White Sox, Tigers, and Athletics. They were last in fielding percentage. Something I wouldn't have even imagined being a White Sox fan.
This podcast dominates bad defense.
I mean,
Jesus.
When I was running team numbers from 2023, it was obvious why this is such a miserable year on this podcast, except for the Cubs. And then ultimately the Cubs made it miserable too. But the league average in fielding percentage last year was .986. The Giants were .981. And just to level set that, the Athletics and Tigers were .982, and somehow the White Sox were .983. I can't even fathom that.
Fielding percentage is one thing. That's one metric to determine defense is so nebulous to try to figure out a few stats even that can kind of put it into context. But fielding percentage is one, I guess. But that is funny that all of our teams are at the bottom of that.
I mean, there's another number like defensive efficiency, and they were 679, which is 5 from the bottom. So a staple. What I'm just pointing out here is that's a staple of the Giants organization, pitching and defense, and they didn't do it last year. So I'm hopeful with Bob Melvin there, who is a very fundamentals defense and pitching wins ball games type of manager. I feel like that's going to come back. It's going to bring Giants baseball back into the fold. So I think defense is a huge storyline. Now, something the Giants have been very inconsistent with, which is my third question mark, is which is really funny about the 3 Giants question marks. They're all keys to being a good baseball team. But we talked about it. It was last podcast or the podcast before, with the signing of Jorge Soler. The Giants have the potential of having their first 30 home run hitter since Barry Bonds, which is just incomprehensible to me. But they got to get, even with great pitching and defense, it only is going to take you so far. And their hitting, which was actually overachieved in 2022, came back down to what we thought it would be. And when you're looking at OPS plus, contrasts teams like the Atlanta Braves, 124, the Dodgers, 113, third on the list. The Giants last year were at 91. Not even the league. They're not even at the league average, which is 100 for those of you who aren't familiar with OPS plus. If you're at 100, you're level set.
Average.
You're average. You're an average hitting team. The Giants were not an average hitting team. They were slightly above average in 2022, but They were well below average in 2023. Now, you've got some pieces there. You've got some dangerous hitters in the lineup now, and we'll talk about Jorge Soler that might change the complexion of, like, it may aid someone like depending on where Yastrzemski's batting in the order, who's shown a decent amount of powers over the year, like a 20 home run guy. Does that push him maybe to 25 home runs if they're more worried about throwing a fatty to Soler and he's seeing better pitches? So, adding these types of bats to the lineup and a Mark and a Chapman, they tend to improve players' offensive numbers. Not their offensive numbers, but other players' offensive numbers because of them looming in the lineup. So I feel like the NL West is a I don't know. Do you think it's arguably the best division in the NL? I don't know, but so they've got an uphill battle there. But we've all seen that the Dodgers tend to not fully perform to the level they should, at least in the playoffs. And then
they'll do fine in the regular season, and they'll fuck it up in the postseason. So,
but then you got the Padres, who have yet to even put everything together. So, I mean, I think it's there for the Giants to at least get a playoff spot, not necessarily win the NL West, but.
Well, we'll get into all that, our predictions next week for our annual Nostradamus prediction show.
Oh yeah, it's the best show, folks. If you've never listened to the Nostradamus show, you can I hate to jinx us, especially since I don't believe in jinxes, but I don't think we can do any worse than last year.
Yeah. Our predicting division winners, Cy Youngs, rookies of the year, MVPs. Yeah, I think we were quite a ways off. I had the Padres and the White Sox in the World Series last year.
Well, I'm going White Sox this year. I'm throwing everyone off. I'm going to be the only one that gets that right. Yeah. No.
I'm speaking of jinxes. I was mainly picking the White Sox to jinx you guys.
Well, you were. It definitely worked.
So maybe you should be more believing in jinxes because it worked perfectly.
One thing we're really good at, everyone out there, and maybe we should consider this on teams we cover on this podcast, we really pick the NL East really well. Smitty and I picked every playoff team correct in the NL East last year, and I'm pretty sure the year before. Well, we didn't necessarily pick the division winners correctly, but we did pick the NL East. We're NL East experts. I don't know why, but
yeah, I think it's all happenstance and all bullshit. But it's fun to talk about.
I'm over here crunching numbers right now.
We also hold ourselves accountable at the end of each season and go over our Nostradamus predictions and see how far we are off. We
Actually,
did that last
show's
October.
better than the Nostradamus.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Yeah. Yeah. All these predictions are meaningless and hilarious and useless, mainly because you don't know who's going to get hurt throughout the season, who's going to develop, who's not. But it's fun for podcasting at least, and we have fun doing it. So we're going to do it again.
All right. Well, that's all I've got for my Giants.
Well, I'm going to move over still to your Giants, but a little bit different subject. The Athletic released their top 20 impact rookies to look out for in 2024. Number 1 on that list was Kyle Harrison from your San Francisco Giants, who you mentioned earlier. Penciled it at number 3 in your rotation.
That's right.
Now, this is written by this article is written by Keith Law, which I find him kind of obnoxious at times, but I thought I wanted to bring this article up. It was notable to me because our podcast is represented very well in the top 6, actually. 4 of the top 6 are teams that we cover on a weekly basis here. That was Kyle Harrison with your Giants. And number 3 was Michael Busch from the Cubs. He thinks Michael Busch is potentially going to be a 20-plus home run hitter with a 785 OPS, potentially. He's 26 years old. It makes sense. He just barely makes it in as a rookie candidate. If you made your debut as a 27-year-old, you couldn't be considered a rookie, which is kind of strange. But there's high hopes for Michael Busch to man first base for the Cubs. But the thing I really wanted to talk about was with my Tigers, how they have number 5 and number 6 on this list, starting with Colt Keith, of course, second baseman. who signed the, all in all, a 9-year, $82 million deal. But in actuality, it's a 6-year, $28 million deal to man second base for the Tigers. We talked about him quite a bit a couple weeks ago. Keith Law concurs that he's got a big upside. He calls him a dark horse rookie of the year candidate, which I like to hear. He thinks he's going to hit 40 doubles, 12 to 15 home runs, 810 OPS. His history is of hard contact, and that's what everybody likes about Colt Keith. And I think particularly Tigers president and GM Scott Harris saw that and thought it was worth his while to sign him to a long-term deal because of that hard hit contact rate. But beyond that, the other rookie the other rookie to watch, and who's probably tune in next week, but I think I might make this fellow my rookie of the year in the American League. Parker Meadows, center fielder for the Tigers. He came up last year for a brief stint and immediately supplanted Riley Green in center field, which is quite the task because Riley Green is one hell of a center fielder. Parker Meadows is demonstrably better, a little bit faster, and just a fantastic fielder. So that's another good thing I have going for me and all Tigers fans. Basically, I have two center fielders in the outfield every day. Riley Green in right field now. Love that. Keith Law particularly thinks that Parker Meadows is good for at least 30 doubles and 15 home runs. Not quite the same power level as a Colt Keith potentially, but I think the defense is going to set Parker Meadows apart, at least in the rookie of the year conversation, because I think he's going to be one of the best center fielders in the American League immediately. Just some things to watch, just some things I had percolating that were corroborated by national media. Again, I'm not a big fan of Keith Law, but I just thought it was interesting that our teams were so well represented in his list there. I could not mention it.
No, I agree. When you think about how over the years, I think the Giants farm system had a pretty bad rap a couple years back, and now they seem to be back near the top of it. And the Tigers, we can say what we want about Sleepy L over there, but a lot of the farm system guys who are coming up right now are part of what he did. So,
I mentioned Jackson Jobe last week. We did a whole segment on that. That is an Al Avila draft pick. So so Al's draft picks didn't come up at the right time to save his job, but now they're starting to work out.
Yeah, I think for Al, it was his poor decisions on bringing in major league talent. Like the trades he made, or the signings he did with free agents are where Al made the mistakes. But I think Scott Harris, I have nothing but respect for what the Tigers organization is doing right now. And
Scott Harris, former Giants GM, so you gotta love him.
Yeah, exactly. And he's towing the line and being patient, and I think it's going to work out well for you guys to where you're going to have this somewhat all-star like team all under team control, which is like a dream come true. Like what the Cubs were, and then you just add you add one of the greatest speech makers since Martin Luther King in a Jason Hayward into your lineup, and
a perfectly timed rain delay,
and an all-star pitcher, to solidify the staff along with all the young talent to push you over the edge. And yeah, I'm not surprised there were two Tigers on that list at all in the was that within the top 6 you said? So yeah, it's they're doing it right over there in Detroit, and you guys should get it. You should be excited. May not be this year, but definitely next year for sure. You're going to be running it.
I thought you were trending towards making a revolutionary announcement on our Nostradamus prediction show next week that you were going to have the Tigers being AL Central Division champions.
Well, I'm crunching numbers here. Maybe I'll do the reverse jinx on you.
Oh, you diabolical. Yeah, I better be careful.
You son of a bitch, right?
We got to be careful with this power we have.
I know. We shatter dreams. We're dream crushers.
I think with that, we can switch over to a segment we haven't had much in quite a while. It would be some shit we couldn't make up.
All
Lots of
right.
funny shit, weird shit that we certainly couldn't make up. Some of it's funny, some of it's not so funny. But the first one is one that I skipped under my radar somehow. That happened a couple weeks ago, but it was the ejection of Lance Lynn from a spring training game. Not only is it was strange enough to be ejected from a spring training game. He was arguing balls and strikes, which is just stupid. I mean, I don't remember the last time someone was ejected from a spring training game or arguing balls and strikes during a spring training game, because all you're really there to do is get your work in. But that, of course, is not how Lance Lynn operates, the biggest red ass on the planet. He was arguing with Angel Hernandez, the second biggest red ass on the planet, potentially. They were not getting along whatsoever, to which point Angel had to eject Lance from the game. So Lance immediately just went out to the bullpen to finish getting his work in, maybe another 20 pitches in the bullpen, at which point Angel Hernandez was having none of that and ejected him again this time from the bullpen.
Oh my
There was a long
God.
conversation with the Cardinals bench, trying to get him to get out of there. Eventually, Hernandez had to get out to the outfield and tell Lance Lynn to get the fuck out. So he was ejected twice. Lance Lynn, of course, took his sweet old time to get off the field, had his mitt on his head, waving goodbye to Angel and everyone else in the field. Just a ridiculous scene between two. I mean, I love Lance Lynn for his antics, but this was over the top. It's a fucking spring training game. Like, what are we doing here? I could see his point, just trying to get his work in the bullpen. He's since he got ejected, he didn't get all the pitches he was supposed to get in. But so Angel Hernandez is being quite a bit of a hard ass to not allow him to do so out in the bullpen. I don't know. It was just a clash of egos that was just too hilarious to not bring up on some shit we couldn't make up.
A not quite as funny story, but compelling story was something that Smitty alluded to at the opening of the show. That Shohei Ohtani's interpreter, Ippei.
You don't need to pronounce his name. It's just his name. It's just it's just his interpreter. We'll call him. Okay.
Is under investigation for allegedly stealing money from Shohei Ohtani to pay off $4.5 million in gambling debts to...
Well, he's not only under investigation, he has been fired as Shohei Ohtani's interpreter as of this evening. This news was breaking.
Yes.
By the Dodgers, yes. He was Shohei's interpreter from the beginning in with the Angels, and the Dodgers hired him on as well when they signed Shohei to be a Dodger. His interpreter has been his closest friend since his time in the United States. They basically spend every waking moment together. This is a strange story that literally happened maybe an hour before we started recording here tonight. So there's a lot going on with this story that doesn't really make sense. And there's going to be a lot more to come out, I believe. Probably maybe more has come out while we were recording this. I think this has potential to be one of the biggest stories in baseball, when the biggest name, the face of baseball, the biggest contract in the history of Major League Baseball is so closely tied with gambling. It is hard to know what Shohei Ohtani's involvement is, because there's been a couple of different stories that have come out, and this is what's very concerning. Is at first Shohei's was his camp was basically doing an interview with ESPN to address the investigation that had been where his name came up. And what the story was at that point is that Shohei had given his interpreter stints of $500,000 to cover his gambling debts. Apparently that happened 9 different times to total $4.5 million. That story was supposed to come out on ESPN today. This is Wednesday. But late this afternoon, the attorneys for Shohei Ohtani announced that he was a victim of massive theft from this interpreter. So suddenly the story has shifted, And the Dodgers immediately fired the interpreter, and there's going to be a lot of fallout from that. This is a federal investigation, is where this information first came from. So Shohei's name came up, and the first story is that he was just covering somebody else's debt, and now it's a theft, an immense betrayal by Shohei's best friend. We'll see where this goes, but I'm fascinated by it. I kind of don't know how to digest it all, having only seen it an hour before we started recording.
I'm gonna tell you
We're
what I
going to see a
think
lot
happened.
more about it.
I'm gonna tell you what I think happened.
All right.
Shohei Ohtani knowingly gave the interpreter the money. Then Shohei Ohtani's camp got involved and was like, you can't be there saying you gave. It's one thing to cover a gambling debt with a legitimate source, but he's covering a gambling debt with a bookie. So he's not even doing it through legitimate means.
Right.
And now they're calling it like, massive theft could also be, is it going to be considered extortion? Because it sounds to me, as you told the story, because you told me this part of the story right before we went on tonight, that he willingly gave him the money. The guy was
it was wired directly from Shohei's accounts to this bookmaker.
There you go.
I mean, that's as close a tie as you can get. So if they're saying that it was stolen from them, it was this interpreter got control of the accounts and was sending this guy money. We'll see how that plays out, but I don't know. The main part of this is, you and I were used to sports gambling as being legalized now. It is not legal yet in the state of it is not legal yet in the state of California. That's why there is a federal investigation into this. It is also severely frowned upon in Major League Baseball. Any ties to gambling.
See Steve Pete Rose for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious the connections. We'll see the 1919 Black Sox as well. I mean, this is a history of trying to stay as far the fuck away from gambling as possible. And right now, the face of baseball couldn't be more tied with gambling than he is right now. So, boy, Shohei's got going to have a lot of interesting comments to make when he gets back to the United States after the stint in Korea. He doesn't have an interpreter to do it for him. So this is going to be a rough little time for the new Dodger.
Yeah. My only question is, was his bookie Bruno Mars?
I don't get the reference.
Oh, you don't know it. So Bruno Mars, a story broke that he was into MGM for $50 million in gambling debt earlier this week. So, well, my big joke did not roll over well here. Sports radio boy doesn't look at everything outside of sports radio over there. He's in a dungeon listening to sports radio all the time.
Sorry, I'm not at a concert every fucking night as
that's right.
Aging middle-aged man.
That's right. Sprints last night, everyone, and La Rosa de Noir. Incredible. Anyway.
I have no idea what you just said, but
I know. So I think the biggest part of this investigation, and it'll be interesting to see how MLB handles this, is, I mean, sure, it was if it comes out that Ohtani's interpreter did not have access to his accounts and Ohtani gave him the money, was he placing bets for Ohtani?
I mean, that's the obvious inference of wrongdoing. Seems incredibly reckless, incredibly ill-conceived. I'd be shocked if that's the full story. That would be horrendous for the game of baseball. I really hope that is not the case. I mean, what do you do there? I don't know. Let's not get too far. We're only like 2 hours into the story breaking, so there's a lot to be heard. We will probably have a lot to talk about with that next week on our Nostra Dumbass prediction show that might have to veer into gambling territory. It might be the biggest story in all of sports. So
one of us is going to predict Shohei Ohtani's Major League Baseball career is over.
Yeah. Well, I predicted him to be the AL MVP, which came to fruition. So yeah, hopefully we're not predicting things like that for Shohei, who seems to be the most likable guy, but maybe he's just a degenerate gambler all along. And now he's just throwing his interpreter under the bus.
Who knew?
You might call him a decoy, as he named his dog, I believe, Decoy.
Well, there you go. It's all coming together.
It all comes together.
Maybe the dog's been playing bets.
Well, the final shit you couldn't make up that we'll use to wrap up this show is just a personal rant I wanted to have.
Oh.
Every March marks the return of my favorite radio show, which apparently you don't like sports talk radio anymore, which is news to me as of this evening. But
it's a little repetitive.
Matt Spiegel hosting Hit and Run Sunday mornings on 670 The Score there in Chicago. So that show's been hosted by many people, but I think Matt Spiegel has been the best host by far. That Spiegel's actually our age. He likes baseball more than anyone likes anything. I think he is a savant. He's the joy that he has talking about baseball. The insight he has is second to none. He does a 3-hour show every Sunday, March through August, and then of course football starts and overruns everything, so he loses that show. But it's a big deal when Hit and Run comes back. A big deal for me, at least. Comes back in March. This weekend, it debuted on Sunday, to which the news that Justin Fields had been traded from the Bears obliterated any baseball talk to start the show, at least. The show started with nothing but Justin Fields talk, to which Spiegel kind of apologized, but it was also obvious his bosses told him this show must be about Justin Fields because that story broke the night before, Saturday night, on St. Patrick's Day, oddly enough. So all anyone wanted to talk about was Justin Fields. The strange thing to me, delve into football a little bit, nobody wanted to rake Ryan Poles over the coals for getting completely fleeced and completely botching this trade, the trade value of Justin Fields to a 6th-round draft pick next year from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
A conditional. It could be
Bears
4.
fans.
It could be 4. It's not going to be because he's not starting, but it could be 4 because Russell Wilson is the starter.
It's a perfect subject for our defunct football podcast, Limp Ditkas, but maybe we'll ramp that one up again someday.
Let's just do what they did on Hit and Run and start talking about the botched Justin Fields trade.
Well, there's 168 hours in a week. All I'm asking for is 3 to talk baseball on the Score. Actually, they do have a show on Saturdays. Bruce Levine hosts Talking Baseball. But yeah, exactly. Bruce is the Score's insider. He is not a radio personality. He's not a good broadcaster. He's probably around the level of us as broadcasting. He just doesn't. He doesn't make a compelling case. The good news is he talks baseball 52 weeks out of the year, so I catch that on Saturday mornings. But the real show is Hit and Run, and it was completely obliterated by football, Bears football, to that. So just a frustrating experience. They did talk a little bit of baseball in the 3 hours, but I just had to bring that up because it's a show I look forward to every year, and it was completely doused by football once again.
Are you okay?
Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah,
I had to throw that in at the end of the show. I feel better now.
I wish I could pass you a virtual tissue.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm 250 miles away. Well, with that, I think we can wrap up this roller coaster of a ride of episode 144 of In the Hole and Socks Type Thing. Next week, of course, tune in to our Nostradamus annual prediction show. You and I haven't talked about when we're going to be doing that. We'll figure that out after the show tonight, but we'll try to do that before the season actually starts. The real opening day next Thursday, the 28th. Looking forward to that, of course. The cool thing baseball did do with opening day, even though this weird Soul World Series Classic, whatever they're calling it, every team plays on Thursday. Everybody's playing, so everybody has the same opening day now, which is going to be just a hell of a day. It's one of the best days of the year. I'm looking forward to it. I'm assuming you are. Are you going to opening day?
No, I'm going. So the children are on spring break the first week of April.
Oh.
And no offense to your Tigers, but on Wednesday at 1:10, after the Tigers roll out of town, the fully stacked White Sox get to deal with the Atlanta Braves. So we're going to go see.
Oh my God.
We're going to go see a powerhouse play. Last year we got to see the Giants play, and the Giants obliterated the White Sox during spring break, like 12-4 or something like that. Also on the Wednesday afternoon. So we're going on this Wednesday afternoon to watch Acuna Jr. and the gang.
That should be entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as a baseball fan, I think I'm going to try to reserve my White Sox games for some of the better matchups this year to go see some of the, most talented players in baseball play, which will be probably a Tigers matchup for when you come into town, obviously.
Yeah, we got to talk about that too.
Yeah. Maybe we'll be doing a live podcast in the parking lot, drinking some type of beer, not Revolution.
That's asking a lot. Fuck Revolution.
But yeah, it's a lot to ask for us to drink beer in the parking lot, but we'll do it.
Record it and be coherent. We have a hard enough time sober and in front of computers. So we'll see how that
through like a half hour, the first half hour. Like we have to do it as we crack the first beers. Maybe get like
I would shoot for 5 minutes and see how far we get. But
maybe get some guest appearances like Sam and some other White Sox fans, on there. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll make
the whole fantasy league.
Yeah, make a show of it.
I like it.
A Shohei Ohtani of it.
All right. Well, let's wrap up this show. You can find us on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is still blowing up. I'm still confused what's going on, but we've got a lot more subscribers this week. We're putting up bigger numbers than we have in the 3 years that is ever existed.
Yeah, we're blowing up.
So
subscribe.
Yeah, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Thanks for subscribing. We'll be posting these videos starting tonight throughout the week. You can find our podcast anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. You can find us on social media. Pete's over there at Sox Type Thing on Twitter, and I'm at Major League A-Holes. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram. So with that, I think we can declare this podcast is over. Peace.
Wordhole Media.